Ukrainian drones showcased in Denmark as Kyiv's tech gains global spotlight. North Korea quietly sends labor to Russia's drone factories, raising new alarms. And Slovakia's Robert Fico flaunts neutrality ahead of the NATO summit. What does it mean for the alliance? Subscribe and comment to help amplify Ukraine's voice and counter Russian aggression. Ukrainian drones have arrived in Odense, Denmark. No worries, what I mean is the International Drone Show, an exhibition showcasing the latest high-tech developments in unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs. Ukraine is presenting its fixed-wing UAV, the Shark. The Shark drone can stay airborne for up to 4 hours and has a cruising speed of 75 km per hour. The Ukrainian armed forces are currently using this drone extensively on the front lines. Exhibition organizers know that the European drone manufacturing business is gaining momentum. This surge has been partly fueled by Ukraine's spiderweb operation. In early June, this operation resulted in over 40 Russian aircraft being destroyed or damaged, demonstrating how cost-effective drone technology can be highly effective in neutralizing large aviation equipment.
The things changed extraordinary, I would say. They were starting to change from 2014, but after full-scale invasion in 2022. So all the world got that UAVs are not only funny things or something pretty. It is the main tool for the modern warfare. So the demand is huge, immense, and the reaction should be very quick.
The interior ministers of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and Nordic countries and Poland have agreed to ban Russian citizens who took part in the war against Ukraine from entering the Schengen zone. This decision was made during a meeting in Tallinn on June 19th, according to Estonian media. Also present at the meeting were EU Commissioner for Home Affairs and Migration, Magnus Brunner, and a representative from the EU border agency Frontex.
Hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens fought against an independent European state. We should take a clear position that these people will not be able to travel freely in the Schengen area. We will not give them residence permits, we will not give them visas, because all these people who have been killing and destroying there mean a very big security risk for all of us. Igor Taro, Estonian Interior Minister.
And while the entry for Ukrainian drones is open to European markets, the entry ban for these Russian citizens is expected to remain in place even after the fighting in Ukraine ends. On June 19th, Ukraine carried out another prisoner swap, bringing back soldiers, most from whom have been held captive in Russia since 2022. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the exchange and provided photos of the result. This swap is part of a broader agreement to exchange prisoners who are severely wounded or seriously ill, an arrangement reached during the talks in Istanbul. Well, it's the only result for the Istanbul talks, by the way. Russia is reluctant to agree to any kind of ceasefire despite international pressure, which seems not to be harsh enough to really pressure Russia. According to Ukraine's coordination headquarters, each free defender is suffering from serious health issues caused by injuries and the harsh conditions of the captivity.
Our people are returning home from Russian captivity. These are soldiers of the armed forces, the National Guard and the State Border Service. Most of them have been in captivity since 2022. Defenders of Ukraine who fought in Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv and Kyiv regions. We are working to bring our people back. Thank you to everyone who helps make these exchanges possible. Our goal is to free every single person. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
A new round of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia concluded in Istanbul on June 2nd. Both sides agreed to proceed with new prisoner exchange covering certain categories of captives under all-for-all framework. As part of the talks, Kyiv also handed Moscow a list of abducted Ukrainian children who must be returned. During the negotiations, Ukraine raised three main issues: an unconditional ceasefire, a full prisoner swap and a meeting of national leaders, but none of that except for prisoner exchange had been accomplished yet. To get the peace process moving again, a meeting between the leaders is needed. This was stated by Ukraine's Deputy Foreign Minister Serhiy Kyslytsya. According to him, without a meeting between Zelensky and Putin, and perhaps even with US President Donald Trump, it is unlikely that any groundbreaking decisions will be reached.
By large, apart from agreements on the exchange of prisoners of war, this format cannot significantly change the situation. Given the dictatorial nature of the regime in Russia, only one person is authorized. He authorized himself to make decisions that could end the war or establish a sustainable ceasefire. Serhiy Kysuitsa, First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, in an interview with Suspilne.
It is pleasant to see defenders returning home after years of enemy captivity, often in inhuman conditions. This is the only result the Ukraine and Russia talks in Turkey by this moment. And further progress will include ceasefire, but whether world leaders are really interested in pressuring Russia, I wouldn't be so sure. North Korea is reportedly planning to send up to 25,000 labor force to work at a drone manufacturing plant in Russia. In return, North Korea gets a training unmanned aerial vehicles operation. North Korea is getting very ready to send up to 25,000 of its labor force to work at a drone manufacturing plant in Russia. In exchange, it is hoping to get a knowledge how to operate unmanned aerial vehicles. According to Japan broadcaster, the workers are to be deployed to the Alabuga plant in the Russia Republic of Tatarstan. This facility, located in central Russia, produced more than 6,000 combat drones and thousands of decoy drones last year. In 2025, Russians aim to ramp up output to between 8,000 and 10,000 kamikaze drones, which will fly at Ukraine or NATO countries.
NHK has learned that North Korea is considering sending workers to a drone manufacturer in Russia to boost production in exchange for training in how to operate the unmanned aircraft. Military cooperation between Russia and North Korea continues to deepen as Russia increases its production of drones amid its invasion of Ukraine. North Korea, meanwhile, aims to strengthen its military. From the publication of the Japanese media NHK.
And these Shahid drones are planned to be used in the war against Ukraine and then in the war against South Korea. Ukraine and Israel are now the only countries in the world who have experience and know how to efficiently shoot down Shahid drones. But now let's turn to Ukraine, to the horrific obliteration that Shahid drones did to Odessa residents this night. An overnight Russian drone attack on Odessa on June 20th caused significant damage to civilian infrastructure, including residential buildings, a university facility, a gas pipeline and the private vehicles. A major blaze broke out in an apartment block in the city center, destroying a four-story residential building. The blast collapsed walls and floors, and there may be people trapped under the rubble right now. Despite active air defense units, a lot of damage was confirmed across the city.
A man died in hospital from his injuries. His identity is being established. 11 civilians and 3 rescuers were injured during the cleanup operation. 4 people, 3 of whom are state emergency service employees, were hospitalized in moderate condition, while the others, after receiving all necessary assistance, continue to receive outpatient treatment. Oleg Kiper, head of the Odessa Regional Military Administration, on Telegram.
The drone assault triggered large fires along the coastline too, and shockwaves damaged nearby recreational facilities. Emergency services continue to work at the scene to deal with the aftermath. Slovakia would only benefit from neutrality at the time when arm manufacturers are rubbing their hands in anticipation of war in Europe. That's what Robert Fico said, the Prime Minister of NATO country Slovakia, amid the NATO summit. Without further comments, watch the report for yourselves.
Slovakia would only benefit from neutrality at a time when arms manufacturers are rubbing their hands in anticipation, and Europe is speaking of war. That's what Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico said on June 16th, ahead of a meeting with President Peter Pellegrini and leaders of political parties, just days before the NATO summit in The Hague. However, Fico added that this decision is not within his power. It's worth noting that the Slovak Prime Minister holds a pro-Russian stance and supports continued imports of Russian energy resources. His statements came amid NATO's plans to raise the mandatory defense spending of member states to 5% of GDP, with 3.5% allocated directly to military needs and the remaining 1.5% to defense-related infrastructure projects.
Would neutrality suit Slovakia? I'm asking this question clearly and officially. What war are we talking about? Who are we supposed to fight? Slovakia must firmly advocate for peace and avoid any military adventures. Unfortunately, the next world war is already knocking on the door.
Fico's remarks about potentially leaving NATO were criticized not only by the parliamentary opposition, but also by parties within his own ruling coalition. Michal Šimečka, leader of the largest opposition party, Progressive Slovakia, called Fico's words scandalous. In his view, such statements undermine Slovakia's foreign policy and play into Vladimir Putin's hands. President Peter Pellegrini stressed that this was the Prime Minister's personal opinion and called the idea provocative. According to him, it's essential that support for Slovakia's NATO membership be a clear part of the government's official program. He also promised not to break NATO consensus at the upcoming summit on June 24th to 25th.
Being a neutral country doesn't mean you're so nice that everyone around you is your friend and nobody can hurt you. Neutrality means you're not part of major international institutions. And then you have to guarantee everything yourself. And in that case, it might not be about spending 3.5% on defense, but maybe 7, 8, even 10%, which we simply wouldn't be able to manage.
On June 17th, President Pellegrini warned that continuing discussions about leaving NATO could ultimately lead to a national referendum on the issue.
Let's not open the door to discussions that could endanger the security of the Slovak Republic. The security of our country must be the top priority, above geopolitics and above gaining a few cheap percentage points from several tens of thousands of voters.
As several Western media outlets have pointed out, no country has ever left NATO since its founding in 1949. Withdrawing from the alliance is a complicated process that, among other things, would require parliamentary approval. Slovakia has been a NATO member since 2004. Analysts emphasize that the decision to exit NATO is not up to Robert Fico alone.
The comment has no near-term practical implications, but is the latest in a stream of anti-Western positions Fico has taken since taking office for the fourth time in 2023. Fico has been on a collision course with Western partners, taking a pro-Russian stance on the war in Ukraine and sparring with the European Union over Slovakia's desire to continue importing Russian gas and oil, as well as domestic reforms affecting justice and media. From the Reuters publication,
according to analysts, Fico's increasingly anti-Western rhetoric may be part of a broader strategy to position himself for early parliamentary elections. He may be trying to attract voters from far-right parties, which are more skeptical of the EU and friendlier toward Russia, even though his party officially promotes a social democratic ideology. However, polling data suggests that if early elections were held, Fico's current coalition would be unlikely to retain a parliamentary majority. Reported by Kristina Dombrovska, UATV News.
And that's it for today. This was the News Digest from the Gaze. Thank you for staying with us. Your attention helps amplify Ukraine's voice across the globe. Please comment and subscribe and stand with Ukraine in the fight for freedom and sovereignty. See you again tomorrow. Until then, stay informed and stay strong.